Hello everyone, this is Yossi Gestetner for GestetnerUpdates.com. I have the honor to have with me the Honorable Congressman Jerrold Nadler, as he is known. Mr. Congressman, hello.
Hi.
Yeah, thanks for giving us a few minutes. I want to go straight to it. First of all, the Occupy Wall Street movement pretty much started in your district. There was a great debate, and I think it's still debatable, if the movement suffers from anti-Semitism or you have some few people popping off with anti-Jewish statements in terms of Jewish bankers. The question is, where do you stand? What's your view on it? And do you think that the recent anti-Jewish acts which take place all across New York City are in any way related to the sentiment out of Occupy Wall Street?
No, well, first of all, the Occupy Wall Street was a lot of people and a lot of different views. Mm-hmm. There were one or two people, as far as I could tell, who had anti-Semitic signs. There were other people who held signs next to them with an arrow pointing, saying, "This is a blank," like an idiot. Worse word, but meaning this is an idiot, the guy holding the anti-Semitic sign. Some of the right-wing people tried to say that there was a lot of anti-Semitism there, but there was no real evidence of that at all. In fact, there was a big Sukkot celebration in Occupy Wall Street, and I think it had nothing to do with anti-Semitism. Uh-huh. Now, the recent anti-Semitic graffiti and other things, I don't think it had anything to do with Occupy Wall Street. It had to do with a few people who were haters. There was no evidence of anything else.
Uh-huh. The Jewish vote is actually moving to the right in recent years, certainly in the Orthodox Hasidic community.
Well, the Orthodox Hasidic community, there's the rest of the community not.
Come again, what is it?
You're correct about the Jewish vote in the Orthodox and Hasidic community moving more conservatively. It's not at all clear that that's happening in the rest of the Jewish vote.
Yeah, I would agree, but my full question was, why is it so? And what are you, as somebody who represents pretty much a lot of Orthodox Hasidic people, are you or the Democrats overall doing any, picked up or stepped up outreach?
Are we doing any what?
Are you doing any more outreach to this community, to keep them in your column?
I think we're going to have to. We're going to. Why do I think it's happening? I think part of it is a reaction against President Obama, who made a number of mistakes in his first year and a half in office on Israel and Middle East policies. And one of the mistakes, I don't have to tell you what those mistakes were. You know them. But in addition to that, he never really defended himself. He never pointed out, for example. In fact, I don't think he has to this date. That when he took office, he very sharply stepped up military aid to Israel, way beyond what Bush had been doing. He very sharply stepped up military coordination with Israel, asked for 2 special emergency appropriations for anti-missile systems. And I don't think he's gotten any credit for that. And I think that his early missteps, and there's been a concerted campaign to paint him as not a friend of Israel. I think that's not correct. I think he is a friend of Israel. I think he made some unfortunate mistakes his first 2 years.
For example, what the mistake is the messaging or the
No, not just the messaging. No, I'm not saying that. No, his mistake was talking about the first one.
1967.
No, the first one was insisting, on the focusing on stopping of settlements before negotiations got going on. Mm-hmm. I think that was a mistake, among other reasons, because it gave Abbas an excuse to avoid negotiations. And second of all, his talking about negotiations starting with the 67 borders plus swaps. Now, that was the Bush policy. It was the United States policy under Clinton and Bush, but it didn't have to be stated that way. Frankly, it didn't have to be given away for free when the Palestinians weren't doing anything weren't offering anything on their part. I think those are mistakes. On the other hand, when he took office, they found, and I'm now quoting Dennis Ross, and not publicly, but to a number of us a year and a half ago. He said, when we, meaning the Obama administration, came into office, we found that the American commitment to keeping Israel militarily stronger than any potential coalition of enemies had been weakened and had been observed only in the breach and wasn't being carried forward.
Wow.
And we didn't say it publicly. We didn't criticize the Bush administration. We simply sharply stepped up military aid and military coordination to make sure that Israel had the military strength. Hold on one second. Okay, had the military strength.
Mm-hmm.
They never bragged about that. They didn't brag about, they very sharply, I think the two most important issues, frankly not the negotiation issues, because there are no negotiations going on. The two most important issues with respect to Israel are, number one, military aid and keeping Israel strong and making sure she has the anti-missiles, which we have done, especially under this administration. And second of all, cracking down on Iran. Iran is a major menace to Israel.
Yeah.
Iranian nuclear bomb, God forbid, would be a terrible threat. And this administration has sharply stepped up sanctions and done everything short of going to war, which it has not ruled out, to prevent that.
Yeah.
And frankly, I haven't said this publicly too much, but I thought that the Bush administration policy on Iran was to talk tough and carry a toothpick, because they didn't do anything. And this administration's policy has been to really crack down as much as possible, and they have.
Let me move on to other things, because I don't want to hold you up too long. I want to keep it short. The third question that I had for you is voter ID. You actually made an argument, which I don't think I can dispute, that there are not many voter ID issues coming up during elections. You made this in a Daily Caller interview. But my question to you is this. Many poor people, they can't afford, they don't have access to taking care of the paperwork, but most of these people, if they're poor minorities, they actually have access to federal programs, Section 8 food stamps. In order to qualify, these people need to show up with a dump load of paperwork. So why wouldn't any of these offices, as a side service, add a photo ID? Hey, you came in for
First of all, they should, but second of all, you shouldn't be requiring a photo ID. The whole point of these requirements of photo IDs that the Republicans are pushing every place they can is to prevent people that they think may tend more to vote for Democrats, much older people, students, younger people, low-income people, who tend in much greater numbers not to have photo IDs, is to cut down on their votes.
Yeah.
Mr. Congressman, if you have the paperwork to get food stamps or to get admission to the city university, that same paperwork ought to be sufficient to allow you to show that shows who you are, ought to be sufficient to allow you to vote.
No, because usually
requirements don't allow that.
Yeah, but I don't think we would want a person to show up with 15 different documents. What I'm saying is this: if a person is from a community where, say, he's poor, she is poor, so probably this person gets anyway government program. So, why shouldn't the government agency provide? You know what? Hey, you have a photo ID too. Make sure you have it.
Excuse me, I misunderstood your question. I agree with you. The government should now. The government should provide. In fact, we passed legislation back in 1993 or 4 under the Clinton administration, Democratic Congress, and we passed legislation that said that basically any time you have contact with government, whenever you see a government office for food stamps, for welfare, for unemployment, whatever, they should offer you a voter registration form at every single one of those government offices.
So why isn't it done? Because
that was because governments, especially Republican-run governments, don't want to do that. So they don't do it.
Come on, Mr. Congressman. Okay, I don't want to. We can have a long discussion because I've heard you made statements in the past, and the government's the Obama administration is a Democrat the last 2.5 years. You can institute this policy. You have the Congress and Senate. I'm not holding it against you. What I'm saying is, Mr. Congressman.
Hold on. Yeah. Most of these offices are not federal offices.
Okay.
They're state and local offices. So, remember, most contact that people have with government, even if they're federally funded.
Yeah, it's run by local and state, correct.
Our local, state, and government. Even if you're getting welfare, you get it from a state office, from a city office, not from the federal office.
Yeah, that's correct. But and I want to close this issue because I want to again move on to another small thing. A young person, a person who's poor, I believe many of them drive cars. They go to clubs. They have photo ID.
Most people, yes. But many people don't drive cars.
So your argument basically is, listen, more than most people, they have the document, the photo ID. The few people that don't, we don't have a big issue by the election. So
there's something like 20, I forget the statistic, but there are quite a few. There are a lot of people, I don't know, 17, 20%, I forget the statistics, that don't have photo ID in this country of perfectly legal people.
Okay. Let me move on because this is really a never ending thing. Let me ask you this question: how are things working between you and Congressman Turner, a next-door neighbor, at least from the area?
Well, we haven't really, I've met him a few times. He seems a nice enough guy, but we haven't really had much dealings yet.
You didn't work on any bills and any policy?
No, not really.
Okay, where do you think the economy...
I assume we will, but we just haven't.
Yeah, all right.
He's only been here a little while.
Okay. Barney Frank, said clearly in 2003, 2004 that there's nothing wrong with Fannie and Freddie. So obviously that was a stupid statement. Where do you think the economy is heading the next 12 to 18 months? Because certainly there are certain things in the economy which are today better than a year or two ago. Nobody can dispute that.
I'm rather pessimistic about the economy. I don't want to get into Fannie and Freddie because, let me just say, Fannie and Freddie were very guilty in bringing, in 2005, 2006, 2007.
Mm.
But they weren't the agencies that brought on the collapse. If you look at they're getting into subprime mortgages and all this stuff, they came in toward the end, and they did much less of it than the big banks and other private institutions.
Mm.
So they were part of the problem, but they weren't the major part of it. They were the smaller part of the problem that caused the problem. In any event, I'm rather pessimistic about the economy because I think we're not following adequate policies to get out of it. We're reliving the 1930s.
Okay.
We're in a depression, not a recession.
We're in depression.
I define the difference as a recession is a cyclical downturn in the business cycle. It comes along every few years.
Yeah.
And we know how to deal with those. You prime the pump, you lower interest rates, you get out of it.
Yeah.
A depression is a longer, more fundamental problem caused usually by a burst of a bubble and by a consequent financial crisis. In this case, the housing bubble burst, the mortgage bubble burst.
Mm-hmm.
There were $8 trillion of value lost in mortgages, and housing, and the banks collapsed and had to be rescued by the federal government. History tells us that when you have a depression following upon a financial crisis, it generally takes you 8 to 10 years to get out of it.
Wow.
8 to 10 years. Now, the only way we know, and when you hear, by the way, some people say you can't spend your way out of a recession or depression, exactly wrong. It's the only way to get out.
Okay, I don't want to get... I don't want to get into that.
My point of view,
okay,
President Obama is going about 1/4 of the way in the right direction, and the Republicans want to gallop 180 degrees in the wrong direction. We're not doing enough. We're not going to do enough. So I think that this economic depression is going to continue for some time because we're not going to have nearly enough government intervention to stop it.
I have a question, and I want to finish the interview with this question from a different angle. Constantly we keep hearing that
I'm sorry, can you?
We hear constantly that Republicans, they want to cut the budget and go back to and it will cost for the poor. But if you look how we spent money in the 1990s when the Republicans had the House and the Senate, government expenditures on many fronts decreased, stayed flat, or increased very little compared to how Bush increased it when he had the first 6 years of Republican House and Senate.
I'm sorry. You're saying the budgets went down in the 90s?
No. I'm saying is this. Certain expenditures for the poor, I don't have it in front of me, it's education and Medicare. Some of these programs increased, were decreased in the 90s or increased very little.
Increased in the 90s, yeah.
Yeah, increased. But then Bush came around, he spent